In this tutorial, I'm going to show you a few quick ways of inputting dynamics. As you've probably guessed by now, they're in the right panel, and they're all in one category. Now obviously, you can click them in the panel and then click onto the page, just like this. Let me do the same thing with a hairpin. I guess I should mention there's a preference that will allow you to load the mouse with a single item and click it in repeatedly. Down near the bottom. I much prefer clicking one item in, leaving it selected, holding down the Alt or Option key, and then clicking wherever else I want it. It's a really good general copy and paste in Dorico. Also, you can drag the handles on crescendos and diminuendos, whether they're hairpins or text, but with the mouse they'll always snap to note heads. As you've probably guessed, I much prefer using the keyboard. The popover for dynamics is Shift D, and just like with everything else, it'll either show at a selection or at the caret. So let's say I wanted to put piano on the start of this bar, with a hairpin up to forte at the start of the next bar. I'm going to select the bar itself by clicking on the staff, then type Shift D, then I'm going to type P, then the less than symbol, F, Enter. And if I click on the forte, you can see these dynamics are automatically grouped, which means that they're aligned together. It also means that if I move the dynamic at either end of the hairpin will automatically grow or shrink. If that's not what you want, you can always right-click or go to the Edit menu, and there are functions for ungrouping or removing from group. So grouping is horizontal. But while I've got this menu open, you can see there are also some linking and unlinking options too. So what are those? Well, let's say I grab these dynamics. I'm going to use Command-Shift-A. It's a brilliant command for selecting more of the same kind of item, and alt-click them to other staves. You can see they're all blue, which means they're all linked together. So if I grab this forte and drag it, they're all going to move. And if I change one of them, then it's going to change all of them. So unlinking is the way to turn that off. By the way, if I go back to preferences yet again, there's an option here to prevent this automatic linking. If you're used to some other notation software, you may be puzzled by something here, which is that if you put in a gradual dynamic, it goes from the beginning of the first note to the end of the last note. This is totally consistent in itself. If I was to put a hairpin just on one note, you're going to say it makes sense for it to start at the start of the note and end at the end of this note's duration. So I think it makes sense that if you select a bunch of notes, it's going to go from the start of the first note to the end of the last note. But it is different to some other programs. By the way, if it's just a hairpin, there are direct key commands. You don't need the popover. Just type Shift comma, that's the less than sign for a crescendo, or Shift period or Shift full stop, the greater than sign for a diminuendo. Let's take a look at this situation with long tied notes. As you've maybe spotted, Dorico thinks of tie chains as single notes, which means that selecting just this note in write mode is impossible. If you wanted to put a hairpin, say, here, how could you do that? Well, as is so often the case, the answer is to use the caret. If you double-click on the note, it's going to bring up the caret at the start of the note. So instead, double-click on the staff itself, then type Shift comma, then type space to extend by whatever note value is up here. The thing that may be confusing about this is that until you've hit space once, the hairpin doesn't have any length, so it won't show up at all. You've got to hit space once. The other thing you can do is invoke the caret, type Shift comma again, then advance the caret using the arrows. Then when you want the hairpin to end, you either need to type Shift /, which is a question mark, or you need to bring up the dynamics popover and type another dynamic. Again, you're not going to see the hairpin until you've put the next thing in.